Security is a broad topic. In this module, we'll cover all the policies that pertain to security within the Apigee Edge Management Platform. Let's talk about the first policy, basic authentication. This policy performs two actions. First, it will base64 encode a username and password to be sent to your backend system. Typically, this is sent in the authorization header. It will also base64 decode an authorization header to obtain the username and password. Once you have the decoded username and password, you can validate it against your user database. Let's discuss the threat protection policies now: XML, JSON, and regular expression protection. The XML threat protection policy allows you to validate the XML payload against a schema defined within this policy. If the payload does not match the provided schema, then an error message is returned to the client. The JSON threat protection policy performs the same validation, except it operates on JSON payloads. One thing to keep in mind is that these policies will only execute if the content type header is set to application/XML or application/JSON. Regular expression protection is the last of the threat protection policies that we'll cover. The previous two policies check the payload. This policy is more generic in that it can check the request structure, such as the request URI, query parameters, flow variables, headers, as well as the payload. This policy uses regular expressions to determine whether or not a request should be rejected. Also, we have a set of predefined regular expressions that check for SQL injection, JavaScript injection, and Java exceptions. Now let's discuss the Verify API Key policy. This policy is usually the first policy in the preflow, and it will validate the API key in the request. This policy is used in conjunction with API products, developers, and developer apps. Once you create these, then an API key and secret is automatically generated. This is the API key that the developer must include in the request, typically within the header, in order for the request to succeed. If the API key is not included, then a 401 unauthorized is returned to the developer. We'll cover OAuth version 1A next, but note that this version has been superseded by version 2, and this is the version that we recommend you use to protect your APIs. OAuth version 1A consists of three policies: OAuth v1a, get OAuth info, and delete OAuth info. The OAuth v1a policy allows you to generate a request token, access token, and validate the access token. The get OAuth info policy retrieves attributes of the token and keys and stores them into flow variables. And this allows you to configure conditional or dynamic behavior within your API. The delete OAuth policy deletes the request token, the verifier, or the access token. Let's discuss OAuth version 2 next. OAuth version 2 differs from version 1a in that it consists of grant types, and each grant type handles a separate use case and client type. The OAuth v2 policy can generate and verify access tokens, generate authorization codes, and generate refresh access tokens. The get OAuth v2 info policy retrieves the attributes of access tokens, refresh tokens, authorization codes, and client app attributes, and stores this data into flow variables. You can use this policy to configure dynamic or conditional behavior based on a customer attribute in a token or an authorization code. The set OAuth v2 info policy lets you add or update custom attributes associated with an access token. These custom attributes include things like the department name, a customer ID, a session identifier. And finally, the delete OAuth v2 info policy deletes the authorization code or the access token. We also provide policies to generate and validate SAML assertions for customers that use SOAP or XML payloads. The last policy that we'll discuss is the access control policy, which allows you to create IP rules to allow or deny IP addresses or IP address ranges. This concludes the security module. If you have any questions, please post them in our community and review our documentation for more details. Thanks for watching.